Hi guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Tessie and you're on Chats with Tessie. And on this channel, we talk about many things, viral topics, dating outcomes. And today I'm going to talk about how I went from the worst, most demonic relationship of my life, which was my first and only horrible relationship, to my best ever relationship where I'm now engaged to my fiance. So buckle up because it's going to be a wild ride. And we're going to go all the way back a decade ago to 10 years ago when I first started online dating on Badoo. So I joined Badoo in 2014 when I was around 18, about to turn 19. And this was my first ever relationship on the app. And as you guys know, I've been dating online for the past 10 years or so. I was on online dating from 2014. And obviously my mom, who's a wonderful person, she taught me, to be studious. She taught me to really, focus on my studies and know what I wanted for the future. But she didn't hone down enough on me having experiences with the opposite gender. So by the time I got to dating apps at 18, I didn't really know what I wanted. And I didn't know what I was looking for either. And that led me to one of the worst men of my entire life that I have ever experienced, being unknown. So, right from the first date, because I had no clue and I was very naive, and I want young girls, especially young black women, not just young black women, but other women in general, to understand that when older women advise you, they really do have more experience than you in this. And I had no idea, right, what it is that I wanted in a man. I was only 18. I had no clue what it was that I wanted in a man. And right from the first date, I suffered. I turned up at the first date with this guy. Let's call him W. I turned up at the first date with W. He had no money. He was talking about how he didn't have money to pay for electricity. I had to spend money on our first date for McDonald's, and I had been the one to travel all the way down to our first date. So already you can see so much was going wrong. So much. Now, I had no clue that I was about to go through the next 2 years of pure trauma and suffering. I was going to go from being a happy, relaxed 18-year-old girl to being a miserable, sad girl who was also recovering from an eating problem at the time. And this also lets you know that when you have eating problems, you have low self-esteem. And at this point, I didn't know who I was. I didn't have my identity. And this man proceeded to tell me so many lies. Let's call him W. Told me so many lies right from the start. He was an international student. He didn't have any stay. He was looking and desperately wishing for me to get married to him so that he would have a visa, so that he would be able to stay in the country in the UK. He'd come from Nigeria and he was looking to be able to stay in the UK. And because I didn't know who I was and I didn't know what I wanted in life, I found myself doing things I never thought I would do at 18. I was the one paying for everything. I was the one paying for all the dates. I was the one who was working so much. Now, don't get me wrong, he was working, but he developed this kind of learned helplessness where every single issue he had, he would come to me crying. He didn't know how to handle himself, how to handle his own life. I suffered deeply. I went from having, a lot of spare income because I started working at 16. I started working at 16. I was very industrious, very entrepreneurial. And I went from having a lot of income to living in the most disgusting living conditions with this man, W, as I'm calling him. At the time I met him, I was 18 and he was 21. Every single place he went, every single thing he did, nothing worked out. I'm not joking. I wish I was. Even his living situation at the time was very precarious. And I made so many mistakes because I didn't know who I was. And at this time, there wasn't that much level up content or anything like that. And unfortunately, a lot of us, our mothers teach us to be not, I don't think being independent is bad, but our mothers teach us to work hard and do everything on our own, but they never teach us to expect things. They never teach us to really expect responsibility from men, especially the men that we date. And this guy he failed in everything he did. That's the only way to describe it. W failed in everything he did. Not only was he a liar who wanted me to date him for a visa and marry him so that he could stay in the country, he was also a cheater. He was on several different apps as of the time he was with me, and I would discover him messaging several different women at the same time, even though I was the one paying for things, doing things. Guys, it was so ridiculously crazy. Even when he had no money, and he never had any money, but even when he really, really had no money, and he needed to move out, his apartment complex refused to renew his lease because he had been paying late the entire time. This man had no good friends. When he needed people to come through for him, nobody was there. All the people he hung out with, no one turned up for W. Who was there? Me. I started a GoFundMe, a fundraiser for this W. And everybody that donated was from my side of the family, my siblings, my brother-in-law, my friends. And the worst thing was that everybody told me about how awful this guy was and that he didn't match me, that he wasn't a good guy and he wasn't a good person. And I refused to listen because I didn't know who I was. I thought I knew better. And I suffered greatly for it. And I'll explain to you how deeply I suffered. Not only did he emotionally cheat on me, and not only did I spend out of pocket everything that I shouldn't have at the age of 18, 19, and 20, I found myself working 3 jobs, completely removing all my interest in my own studies. I had worked hard. I was an intelligent girl. I got a scholarship to university where I was given money by my university every year for my high grades in A-level. And all that money ended up being spent on his visa and all his issues. But to make it worse, I came from a middle-class background and I found myself plunged into poverty with a good-for-nothing man that didn't care what he did or who he hurt as long as he was getting what he wanted. I found myself living in the most disgusting living conditions. Broken light bulbs, broken lamps, moldy walls, completely destroyed toilets. Guys, I'm about to describe to you the most deplorable living conditions that I was living in. I remember when we moved because he was, I wouldn't say evicted, but he wasn't, his lease wasn't renewed. So W's lease, because he kept paying late, was not renewed. And I was the one that had to scrounge up money to look for a new apartment to stay in. And when I did, guys, if you see what this place was like, the walls were moldy. The walls were so moldy that the mold destroyed my clothes and my shoes. This was like a bedsit in the most disgusting part of Luton. And oh my goodness, the walls were so moldy. There was a hole in the ceiling where rats would drop through and spiders would drop through in one of the toilets downstairs. The shower curtain didn't work. And every time you jumped into the shower, it would fall on you and injure you. The toilet was destroyed. So whenever you went to wee or take a dump, when you flushed the toilet water, the dirty toilet water would flood your feet. So you were stepping in your own filth. The hot water didn't work. So what you would have to do is you'd have to boil a kettle and bath in a bucket, and you'd have to boil 3 or 4 kettles just to bath inside a bucket. The place had no central heating. It was absolutely freezing. I went through all of this at the age of 18 or 19 because I refused to listen. And look, I can take accountability for the fact that I was naive and I didn't know any better, but I really want other ladies to understand that when you're young, you think you know everything, especially at that age. You think you know everything. And when other people advise you, you don't believe them. You don't listen to them, especially older women. But they've been there. They've done that. They've experienced things. And there's so much pushback against men being responsible for themselves. So many free jobs. I ended up completely bombing my education, my first degree. I have my master's degree now. And guys, I suffered so much just to get this man out of my life, just to get W out of my life. I remember the day that I'd had enough, the day that I saw that he had cheated yet again on a dating app. And I said to myself, that's it, no more. And by this time, I think I was around 20, going to 21. Yeah, I was still 20, but I was going to 21. And I said, no more. And I said, we are done. And guess what? When I withdrew my support from him, he had nothing. So he had to go back to where he came from, which was Nigeria. He had no choice but to go back because I withdrew my support. I was no longer interested. No longer. I had no love, no care, not one emotion after everything I'd been through. And even getting him out of my life cost money because he had absolutely nothing. I remember having to spend money to get a taxi just so that he would get to the airport. He was in such a pitiful state that I had to even give him money so that when he landed in Nigeria, he would have money to get home from the airport. It was that bad. It was that bad. And when he left, my whole life was in tatters because I had spent so much of my growing years, the years I was meant to invest in myself, on him. I was in debt. I was broke. I had terrible grades for my bachelor's degree. Barely any friends. My parents were disappointed in me. It was horrible. Absolutely horrible. And I was in therapy for about a year. And it took me a long time before I realized where I had gone wrong and what I had allowed myself to experience. And it took me a long time before I forgave myself for experience, because I was so angry at myself, because I had to work really hard. During the years of 2018 and 2019, I suffered deeply working hard to reverse the mistakes I had made from that one relationship. And I learned extremely fast that I would never accept brokenness, struggle, confusion from a man ever again. I learned so fast. So fast. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. I had to spend some time paying off my debt. I had to go back and do my master's degree. And I invested this time in myself, not in someone who didn't even know who they were. I invested in myself. I was able to start taking care of myself, looking better, focusing on building myself up. And I really focused on what it was I wanted and didn't want in a man. Everything. And guess what, guys? You'll never guess what. That first W, he spent 3 years begging for my forgiveness, begging for me to take him back. He spent 3 years. I kept telling him, I'm not interested. I will never be interested in you. But this man was so desperate to get back with me because nobody ever did the things for him that I did. He never met, even his own parents never put that much interest into him. And all the love I gave him, I took that away and I gave it to myself. And I prayed so hard during the times where it was so difficult. I prayed hard to God and I said, God, all the suffering that I experienced in this one relationship, you are going to give me quadruple the blessing in the successful relationship that you are going to send to me. The man that's going to be my husband is going to treat me 10 times, 100,000 times better than the experience I had in this first relationship. I remember when I used to cry and pray and pray and pray. And I changed how I saw things. In fact, I would say I became brutal. I became someone who demanded nothing less than what I wanted and didn't accept anything less. As soon as a guy became rude, abusive verbally, violent, tried to even make any connotations of being violent or mean or didn't put in any effort, he was gone. I didn't give second chances any longer. And I found from the ages of 23 that I started being treated better. I started being treated with real prestige. I was being treated like a real woman that was appreciated. I met men who took me out, spoiled me. I started attracting amazing things into my life, being spoiled by random people. I've had hotel trips. I've had flights. I've had holidays. So many different things. Handbags, things, money gifted to me by random people, not just men that I've dated, random people, even random men that I don't even know. And I've said it several times all over my channel. And from the ages of 23, after that horrible experience when I was 18, I took 2 years out to just not date anybody. Around between the ages of 21 and 23, I took 2 years to sort myself out, sort my head, my emotional state. And when I started dating again, when I went back on the dating app, I started meeting so much better people. I started meeting guys that took me out. And from then on, from the ages of 23, I never paid for a date. Ever in my life. After 23 years old, I never paid for a date. And I'm 28 years now. So that means for the past 5 years, I have not paid for any dates. And I have been spoiled rotten. And each relationship I got into became better and better because I became brutal with what I wanted in life. I demanded nothing less than the best because I had experienced the worst, the bottom of hell with my first ever relationship. And that's how I went from my first relationship to my best relationship. I met Greg, my fiance, and you guys know him as G. I met him in 2022. Before him, I dated, let's call him B, and he was a wonderful man. He proposed to me. I said no because he had different plans for his life. And then before him, I was dating someone called M, let's call him M. And he was a well-to-do guy, not the person for me in my life, but he treated me somewhat decently, treated me well. So from the ages of 23, I started experiencing being treated well, and I never, ever, 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 ever settled for anything less than I wanted in life. And that brings me to my most recent relationship where I met Greg, my beloved fiance, who I love so much, who loves me so much. And I went from poverty, needless, unnecessary poverty, living in squalor with a uninspired, struggling, mean, cheating, lying, and verbally and emotionally abusive man, to being with the best, most kindest, generous, sweetest, sexiest, loveliest, heart-warming, appreciative, amazing individual man. Like, the moment I met this guy, I just said to myself, this is the most amazing, incredible man. And I knew that all the suffering I experienced had come round for my good, and this was my time. And the way this man treats me, the way he loves me, when I was sick, he was by my side. When I was ill, he was by my side. This man is so sensitive towards my feelings. He cares for me. He loves me so much. He would do anything for me. He has shown that he would do anything for me, because when I've been extremely unwell, he's been there by my side. After surgery, he was there, taking care of me, loving me. All the things that I get from him, he provides for me. Diamonds, trips, lavish things, gifts from the heart, experiences, surprises that come from his heart. Even our whole proposal, he did it himself. He surprised me. He said to me, baby, I will adjust to you. And I went from hell to heaven. And it was just by knowing who I am, knowing my identity, knowing who I am, remembering who I am, listening to my parents, and actually understanding that I didn't know what I wanted as a person, right? Understanding who I was, accepting nothing less than what I wanted, knowing what I wanted in a man and what I wanted, what I didn't want, and knowing what I wanted for myself. Because I didn't know who I was when I was 18. I had no clue who I was. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know anything about myself. I was someone who I hadn't even formed my own proper thoughts and emotions. So, if you're currently going through an awful relationship with somebody, just know that it doesn't have to be like that. You don't have to be in that situation. And there is better out there for you. The encore's my diamond, we're praying engagement ring, my bracelet. Now the Valentine's Day. These are 1 carat. These are 1 carat diamonds. And then you got me this. Oh my gosh, girl! This man just spoils the shit out of me. It's crazy. There is better out there for you, but the only way you will find it is by leaving that awful situation and taking time to know who you are and develop yourself so that you can find the right person for you, so that you can find the one that will actually be there for you. I have never been as happy as I am now in the relationship I am in. I feel cherished. I feel adored. And even then, the previous relationships were still good too. From the age of 23, after I learned, I never went back. I never went back to the type of person I was when I was 18. I never went back. The self-confidence and self-belief I have in myself now has come from the trial and tribulation of pure suffering. And that first relationship was the first and only time I was ever cheated on. I was never cheated on after that because I never accepted anything less than what I wanted. And that actually showed, not only did it reflect how people treated me, people started treating me better, started doing things for me because I demanded nothing less. And so they had no choice but to do the utmost best. Otherwise, I wouldn't entertain them. That was it. I completely had zero tolerance for anything that I didn't believe served me or made my life better or happier or brought betterness into my life. And I became someone who was better to be around. Funnily enough, when I started having higher standards, knowing who I was, discovering my identity, I became a quality person for other people to be around, and other people started wanting to be in my presence and started doing things in order to be in my presence. Now, the way I'm seriously so much looking forward to getting married to my beloved. I love him so much, and he loves me so much. And yeah, that's the story of how I went from the worst, most demonic relationship of my life with W to the best and most fantastic relationship of my life with Greg. So from W to G. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. That's the whole story. I felt it was important that I talk about this because on this channel I'm always talking about the amazing experiences that I have, but I wanted you guys to understand that I've experienced hell, and that's why I'm so adamant about especially Black women opening up your options and having higher standards no matter what you do, no matter where you go, no matter what race of person you date, whether you are a white woman, an Asian woman, a Black woman, you must always have options for yourself, and you must bring higher standards to whoever it is you date, no matter the race and color of person, because the character of the individual is the most important thing, not the color of their skin. The character, how they treat you, how they behave, what they do when life is tough. What do they do and how do they treat you when your back is turned, when you're not there with them? That is the most important thing. So I hope you guys have learned a lot from this video. And yeah, this is the story of how I went from my worst ever relationship to the best. And lastly, one of the best things about becoming a different person was that I went from looking like this to this. So I went looking like I was struggling, like life was hard, and I went from looking like this to this. Because I was able to rest, I was able to finally enjoy my life and not put my life on hold for people who didn't deserve that level of effort from me. So a bad relationship will have you looking like death. And a good relationship will have you looking like an angel. It will have you looking amazing. It's up to you to decide what situation you want to be in, but you do have the power to decide that. So yeah, thank you guys for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you later. Bye.